Thank you, Larry, for that lovely introduction. And good morning. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm going to serve two roles. I'm going to do a centering as well as a talk. And our topic today is applying 10 principles of yoga, 10 ancient principles. And 5 of them are for social harmony, getting along well with others and succeeding. And 5 of them are for making yourself the best person you can be. Okay? I'm sure you all already know these, okay? So today the emphasis is on the word apply, to remember to apply them. I'm going to share some kind of sort of funny examples of how I don't always apply them, but then I enjoy self-correcting, which is so much fun. So before we do the principles, I would like to guide us in a heart math meditation, which I learned from Greg Braden. How many of you are familiar with heart math? Great, good number of you, and out there too, okay, out there in the zone. Okay, well, then let me review it for the people who are not familiar with it. It's basically 3 steps. He starts each one with the word shift. Shift focus, shift breathing, shift feeling. So the first thing is to shift your focus from your head to your heart, okay? And we all know how good it feels to do that. Greg suggests touching. He said all of the masters that he's met say to get into the heart space, sometimes there's a way of doing it by touch. And I wanted to recommend a yoga mudra. Mudra's a hand gesture. This is the heart-nurturing mudra. You just cross your thumbs and put it over your heart. And just take a moment to close your eyes and feel that. Can you feel that? Feels so good, I think, for me anyway. How many of you think it feels good? All right, let me finish the 3 steps and then we'll get into it. So the second, once you get into your heart, the second step is to shift breath so that you're breathing so slowly. Perhaps inhaling to the count of 6, exhaling to the count of 6, inhaling to the count of 6, exhaling to the count of 6. And just continue for a while till you feel yourself really feeling that you're in your heart. Inhaling to the count of 6, exhaling to the count of 6. Inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, exhaling. Good. And as you drop into your heart, shift your feeling to one of these emotions: gratitude, appreciation, caring, compassion. Doesn't need to be one, could be more than one, could be all of them. Think of the people and experiences that have you feel gratitude, appreciation, caring, and emotion. Their faces come to mind, I'm sure. And just take a few moments to treasure them in your heart, what you feel grateful for and what you appreciate. Still breathing slowly into the heart space, taking a few more moments to think and vision what makes you feel compassion, caring, appreciation, gratitude. I'm going to allow you to have a few moments of silence, just to bask in treasuring those feelings for a few moments. And now please take the next few moments to gently transition, complete whatever it is you're feeling, savor it, and transition to open up your eyes and taking in the people around you. But stay in your heart space as you turn to the one next to you and the other one next to you. Just sharing your hearts with each other. Great, beautiful. Thank you so much. And doesn't it feel good to hold the heart? And we can release that, or you can stay that way if you like. Okay, before we go into the yoga principles, I'm going to tell you a little story about how important they are to me and where I was most inspired to write my book and CD. I was camping on Mount Shasta, which I was fond of doing every summer. in my Ford van. Anybody here ever camp out in a van or live in a van part-time? Yeah, okay. Well, it had a stove, sink, a little couch and a table, and my own little built closet. Well, I would go up to Mount Shasta and camp. And then at night, by my little oil lamp, I'd sometimes do a tarot reading. And you take a tarot card, and it tells you what the card means. Then it gives you some reflection questions, and often some affirmations. So here I was picking a tarot card, and I got this, I can do this with the yoga principles. The 10 ancient principles from hundreds of years before Christ that teach us how to be thriving human beings free of suffering. I can write a description, a few reflection questions, and some affirmations. Whoa. So I did that, and for the next couple of days, I finished the first draft. I went back the following year and completed a second final draft, and then I self-published it. And I sent it out to yoga teachers everywhere. And I gave them a beer metaphor. I don't know if that's appropriate in the spiritual world, but I told them I would sell them a 6-pack of these books for an inexpensive price. And I want you to know that it sold out. 3,000 copies sold out within 2 years, and I had to do another printing. So I'm just sharing that with you. That's how important they are to me and to other people. And I made this spiral book so that the yoga teacher could open it up and put it on the ground. And there's only 4 pages for each principle. How many of you are familiar with these 10 principles? How many here and how many in the audience? Interesting, we don't have a whole bunch of yoga teachers today. Well, I'm glad to share them with you, and don't think of them as being for yoga. They're for humanity. Okay. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about 2 of them, mainly compassion and self-study. And then we're going to mention the others so that I don't leave you wondering what they are. Okay? So let's go into the history of it a little bit. So hundreds of years before Christ, wandering sadhus, sadhu is a name for the sages that wandered, teaching, sharing their philosophy. They shared this fund of information about yoga wisdom. And the whole purpose of the Yoga Sutras, or threads of wisdom, sutra is a thread of wisdom, is to let you know that the human condition involves suffering. And these are the things that make us suffer. And if you would like to not suffer and be free, here's a way. Okay? So these 10 principles were ways to stay free and thrive and prevent suffering. Their qualities the sadhus, the wise men, observed these qualities were the qualities of people who are successful at avoiding suffering. So 200 years before Christ, a man named Patanjali, who's alleged to be both a doctor and a grammarian, is the one responsible for culling all of this yoga wisdom into 196 aphorisms or sayings. And this is the foundation of yoga today. And yoga means unity of mind, body, and spirit. It's what we're about. It's not about putting your feet in your ears, okay? All right. In fact, in a moment, I'm going to tell you what the 8 limbs of yoga are. Postures is only one facet of yoga. There's 7 other facets. And these principles are part of that. So let's see. Patanjali calls these codes great vows to be practiced by all cultures. The first 5 principles are called yamas, Y-A-M-A. And yama in Sanskrit means restraints. So they were considered social restraints. I preferred to use the positive, so I call them social harmonizers, social harmony. And the second 5 principles are called niyamas. N-I means internal. So the niyamas are the restraints or the concerns or the observances for you to take care of internally to make yourself the best person you can be. So these 2 sets of principles are the first 2 steps of the 8 limbs of yoga. Limbs, legs, parts. While it's not our topic today, I want to mention the 8 limbs of yoga because I have a feeling you'll even say, what are the other limbs? Okay. So first, it's principles to get along well with people and yourself. I wonder why they put that first. Well, it's almost, we can't go inward and develop ourselves if we have a lot of conflict and drama going on out there, correct? So the second limb is to make yourself the best person you can be. And these principles, if followed, take you to the essence of the good person that you already are. So they're not really things you have to add to yourself. They're sort of things you have to remember, to look in, to find in yourself, and to practice, and to feel, and to share. So we have 5 principles for social harmony, 5 principles for personal growth. Those are the first 2. The third is postures. You know that, all that stuff. The fourth is breathing, consciously breathing You can adapt your breath, that's another workshop, and how you can speed up your breath to give yourself more energy, slow down your breath to relax more, etc. Then there's the fifth and sixth are more subtle. The fifth is, in yoga, you withdraw your senses from the outside so you don't hear the noise around you. You don't let things bother you. And the sixth is you concentrate within. And then the seventh is meditation, where you get to still your mind a little bit. And the eighth is transcendence. Wow, I feel so good. I'm not thinking about anything. You know how if you've ever been to a really good Reiki class or yoga class and you leave and you just feel one. Okay? So those are the 8 limbs of yoga. And these principles have a very important foundation 100 years before Christ. So I was just reading an article by a well-known yogi, Donna Farhi, so I want to give her credit because I'm using some of her unique languaging. She says, rather than calling these principles do's and don'ts, they're actually don'ts and do's, because the first 5 are about what we have to watch out to not do, like not stealing, and the last 5 are things to practice. So it's not just a list of don'ts and do's, but she calls them, Donna Farhi, this is, wise characteristics. So the first 5 that we call social harmony, she's calling wise characteristics, because the sadhu said these were the characteristics of the wisest men and women. And the second 5, she calls codes for living soulfully. Wow, I really like that. Codes for really getting in touch with the spiritual essence and the oneness that we are. Okay? So I put down in my notes, these are not the 10 commandments, and they're definitely not shoulds to be imposed. When we do this, and I do these workshops, we always do conscious languaging. Don't listen to this and then say to somebody, I need to do this, I gotta do that, I have to do this. You can say, I choose to, or I prefer to, but don't should on yourself. These are all coulds. I could be more aware of this in this situation in my life, right? And we never do any blame. One of my teachers, a friend named Quinta who passed, she was a neurolinguistic programmer, and she taught me, when I realize something I can shift, to say to myself, good notice, Johanna. So I say, good notice, I can shift that. So I'm about to give you examples of times when I violated compassion and caught myself, okay? All right, so once again, the principles are not just things to do, but they're descriptions of our essence. They're not goals, but they're vehicles to the essence of who we already are to celebrate. Okay, now the first one, when we look at the first yama, it's called Ahimsa. Means not, and himsa means harming. So the first principle is not harming, but it goes beyond that, because we're adding the positive to it. You have no idea how many things are harming. We're going to go over them in the workshop. Do you realize when you're impatient with somebody, it's harming? Do you know what I mean? There's so many things that we do that are harming that we don't realize. Anyway, Mahatma Gandhi pointed out, quote, Ahimsa is not merely a negative state of harmlessness, but it's a positive state of love, of doing good, even to the evildoer. Okay? So I know most of us are compassionate people most of the time. But let's look at how we can apply these principles more fully. When we do the workshop today, what we're going to do is we start out with how we're already applying them, because you always start with the positive. And then we look at ways we can apply them more fully, see if we get any ahas. So here are some examples of my not being compassionate. And I just got an email from somebody the other day that wasn't compassionate at all, so I'm going to share some of these things with you. So the first one was the idea of rushing someone and being impatient. And I can remember being online in a grocery store when I was going to be late for an appointment, as I usually put too many things together. And this girl was slower than Hades, you know? And I don't know what I was thinking in my mind. Is she STONED or what, you know? And it wasn't very kind. And then I shifted myself as I got to the counter. And as I was paying, I said to her, hard day. And she said to me, one of my colleagues didn't come in and I've had to do a double shift. So there's an example of how glad you are when you can self-correct, okay? We don't know what's going on in their lives. Another example, I saw a woman yanking her kid down the grocery store aisle. I guess I have a lot of grocery experiences. Well, down a store aisle, yanking her daughter, okay? And I looked at that woman with, you know, sweet spiritual soul that I am. I looked at her and said, how could horrible people like that have children? You know, okay? But then I caught myself. And I said, Johanna, how could you judge her? You don't have kids. You don't know what it's like. Maybe this woman doesn't have a moment to breathe. Maybe she's just so burnt out with taking care of this kid morning, noon, and night, And once compassion came, again, I saw it. Oh, you're human, Johanna. You were judging. Good notice. Don't get mad at me. It's okay. All right. Another example was a student who came into my yoga class in Nueva York, in New York. And we mostly had sweat clothes on or leotards or whatever, and very little makeup, except when we were performing on stage. And this lady came in covered with leather. She had leather boots, leather pants, leather jacket. Her hair was all piled up on top of her head, and eyelashes and green fangs on the nails. And of course, being the wonderful spiritual human being that I am, my mind went to, what the heck is she dressed for? Is she a biker? All right. So, of course, she took her boots off. We're not allowed to wear shoes in class. And I led a lovely class, and she came up at the end, and she shared her heart, and she was just so beautiful, so spiritual. I just got caught dead in my tracks, self-correcting, still another time. And my car wouldn't start. Do you know she drove me home? And I just got to see what a soulful person she was, and she came back. Good person. So, as marvelously spiritual and studied as I am, if I can still make all of these mistakes with unawareness, we all do. So this is what we're just looking at, how we can apply it more fully and catch ourselves. All right, the one about the email, sending inconsiderate emails and texts. Now, I sit in my lazy boy chair, I do my meditation, I read my prayers, I got crystals all around me, and then I say, well, I'm gonna look at my emails. And all of a sudden comes in an email from this woman I don't know. She had emailed me wanting to rent my house, which I had rented as the Contentment Lodge, but I forgot it was still on my website, because during the pandemic, we're not doing that. So she sent me an email saying, because we're kindred spirits, I want to rent your house. And I sent her an email, sorry, I'm not renting it these days. So she sent me this note, and I'll just give you the last part. She says, I guess you've changed what you're offering on your website, and quote, for being a healer, your communication is rough around the edges. Maybe you should update your website to your current offerings. Wish you the best, and may the sun shine upon you. So anyway, I did get up out of my lazy boy chair to my computer, and I put not renting now. It took 2 minutes, but I didn't realize it was there. But the point is, we don't know what's going on in her life either. My kindred spirit found my communication rough around the edges for a healer. Who knows what was going on in her life? Okay. Now, I'm no angel either. I've noticed that I tend to violate this principle of compassion and get really impatient with telephone employees. I call up because I need something. I tell them what I need. Then they ask me what I need like they didn't hear me. And they just keep doing it. Anybody know what I mean about telephone people? I don't know where they get them from or how long they take training them. Like you can start tomorrow. You know what I mean? No training. But I find that I can get very impatient. And my big thing is, I want to speak to your supervisor. I am very quick, supervisor. And when you think about it, I'm doing my best to be more conscious of that and not do that anymore. You know what I mean? Because that person is doing the best they can with their job. So all I have to do is take a breath and say, you can't do this at Johanna, New York pace. You have to do this at this person's pace. You follow? And teaching me kindness, and teaching me patience, and teaching me to repeat things a few times, and teaching me to wait. And then at the end, they tell me I'm in the wrong department anyway, so I don't know what to tell them. Anyway, so the next question is, how about you? How are you doing with compassion? No shoulds, just coulds. So the invitation is there. I don't think we have to spend more time with that. But before we move to the niyamas, the internal ones, I would quickly mention the other 4. We're not going to spend a lot of time with them, but I don't want you to go out saying, she gave me 2 of 10. What are the other 8? Okay? So I'm going to mention the 5 yamas first, the other ones. The second one is truthfulness, then non-stealing, then moderation, then non-attachment. Okay? We'll just take a couple of seconds with each one. So for truthfulness, I find truthfulness just about the most complicated one, because truth is so relative, because as you change your point of view, your truth changes. And then there's truth with others, which is honesty. There's truth with yourself, which is integrity. And there's just so many dimensions to truth. An example I give is an employee being against a proposal, then once it was instituted, 3 months later, finding she loved it. It's the same truth. It's just her point of view changed. Same exact procedure. So a thought for you about truthfulness. What areas in your life are you true to yourself? And what situations are you not true to yourself? Every time you give in to somebody about something, you're really not being true to yourself. I mean, compromise is necessary in life, but sometimes people somebody else is a little stronger, so they go, okay, we'll do it your way. Okay, we'll do it your way. So you want to be true to yourself as much as you can. That's another dimension. The not stealing, I know you don't steal possessions. We don't steal possessions. But the definition of not stealing is, I put it positively, respecting what belongs to others and taking only what is freely given. Okay, now I would like to see a show of hands for anyone who never took home something that wasn't freely given. Is there anybody in here who never took home a towel or a pen or a... Okay, you never did?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, a show of hands of somebody who never did. All right, let's have a show of hands of those who did. You know you took something that wasn't freely given. Okay, end of case. So, but stealing also refers to time. Like if the father is taking the child out for the weekend, the divorced father, and doesn't really spend time with the child, it's about stealing time from something. If you're at your job and you're not doing your job, but you're writing a letter to a friend, or you're leaving the job early to go to the dentist. There's all sorts of little ways that we do these little stealing of time, stealing of credit to look into. So the thought would be, how can you show greater respect for other people's time? And one of the things I read, she said, just by asking, is this a good time to talk with you? Before you give your whole spiel to the person that you're calling. That's an example. Moderation comes from brahmacharya. Brahmacharya is giving your energy to Brahma or giving your energy to God. And originally it referred to celibacy, but most of the yogis were married and had children. But it was the idea of channeling your energy to higher purposes. Okay? It's in modern meaning, it's about being conscious about your sensuality and your sexuality and monitoring your energy so that you have time for your spiritual practice and you can connect with the higher forces of life. And the last one, non-attachment, is about letting go of possessiveness. We all have attachment to people. That's my partner. You want your daughter or son to be a certain way. We have attachments to things. That's my cup, my car. You want to use my car? Doing things your way. This is the my, I, me. Letting go of this possessiveness to having things go your way. And then the question is, in what ways might you be possessive of things or people? All right. Now, according to Patanjali, the yamas are the great vows to be practiced by all people at all times in all cultures. And then he goes on to do the niyamas, which are practiced by individuals to keep themselves free of human suffering and connected to a higher power. The second principles are to keep us connected to a higher power. The last one is surrender to God. Okay. How are we doing for time? Can I finish these or should I stop? We good? Oh, okay. I can't look at my watch and read notes and talk to you. Okay, so we have time. All right, now, niyamas, we're going internal. Supposedly, we've worked on all of these things and we're getting along well with others and we're succeeding in life and our minds are pretty peaceful. So now, in terms of cultivating ourselves, the first niyama is purity. Well, I'll give you all four. They're purity, contentment, discipline, self-study, and surrender to a higher power. Okay? And the Dhanapari that I mentioned earlier, I love that she calls them codes for living soulfully, okay? Or internal observances. Now, purity. We all know it helps if you keep your car clean, your office clean, your room clean, et cetera, et cetera. So there's cleanliness of your environment, there's cleanliness of your appearance, there's cleanliness of your internal organs by eating properly and not taking substances that are not good for you. And there's cleanliness of mind, body, speech, thought. Cleanliness of thought means you're not having hidden agendas, and cleanliness of emotions, meaning you don't allow yourself to go to the deep negative ones, the deep hurtful ones. So you're keeping a pure watch over what you think, say, and do. And a thought would be, how might you clean up your inner or outer environment? And then the next one is contentment, which I love. Cultivate contentment. It's your job, forgive me for pointing, it's your job to make yourself contented. It's not your wife's job. It's not your husband's job. It's not your mother's job or father's job, okay? So what do we do when everything hits the fan and we're not contented, okay? We don't want to be in denial. Sometimes things stink, you know what I mean? And they need to change for sure and hopefully quickly. The wisdom is to be with what's so. Accept what's so, but don't dramatize it. Like, oh my God, how did this happen to me? don't dramatize it. Just be with it, plant seeds. And part of contentment is to have hopefulness. Because if stuff stinks right now and you don't have any hopefulness, you're in pretty bad shape. You know what I mean? You have to have a trust or a faith that you can plant seeds, that this happened for a reason, you're learning the lesson, and you can shift it. Good? Okay? So you're responsible for your own contentment, and the thought would be, what percentage of the time are you contented? And what happens to you the rest of the time? These are food for thought. Now, discipline. Discipline has gotten a very bad rap. I don't know of anybody else besides me who used to get spanked with a strap by my dad. Anybody ever get spanked with a strap? Yeah, discipline has got a bad rap, okay? Anybody here ever get a ticket from a cop or an officer? Okay, this is getting disciplined, all right? So discipline has a bad rap, but there's discipline from the outside and there's discipline from the inside. I was thinking the other day as I was driving, I wasn't sure a lady was going to stop or not. And it just occurred to me, I said, you have to have a lot of trust to drive because you have to trust these other people to stop. Think about that. Okay, the discipline to obey the laws. So I mentioned outside discipline, your job, the rules, the time clock, the speed limit, the laws. And inside discipline is your personal drive to get things done, okay? How many graduated high school? Okay, you had to pass the tests, right? You had to take the regents, right? There were so many things calling for your attention as a teenager, okay? But somehow you managed to get some study in there. Not as much as your mother wanted, but some, all right? Discipline, inside discipline, is the discipline you need. It's good for you. Discipline is good for you. I want to make a banner and start a crusade. Discipline is good for you because it helps you do the things that help you grow, all right? I said to myself, give them the thought, discipline's the strength to avoid the distractions, essentially, is what discipline is. You know how many times you go to the refrigerator when you have something you're supposed to be working on? Avoid the distractions and do what's good for you. And my thought for you is, how might you apply some more good-for-you discipline in your life? Okay? Self-study we're going to get to in a little bit, because that's what I'm ending with. But that's self-reflection, educational growth, attending spiritual gatherings. Self-studies about making conscious choices and monitoring each day's experience, asking yourself, how am I doing? I think it was Mayor Koch back in New York who used to ask himself all the time, how am I doing? Okay? But to ask yourself, how am I doing, even when you go to bed at night, all right? You reflect on your thoughts, your words, your actions, their effect on you and their effect on other people, choosing them to be for the highest good. So the thought I have for you today is to ask yourself, how am I doing? And see what comes to you. Now, surrendering to a higher power is the final principle. These are practices, actually. It's the final practice that these all lead up to. They get you closer to your essence as being connected with God. As you're more disciplined with yourself, you study yourself, you release things, you get closer and closer to that internal you. That's the connectedness we speak of and the oneness with the divine. So it's about promoting your divine connection to the essence of what each and all of us is, and seeing the big picture as to your personal story, the me, my, I, and this is happening on the big picture, and having some trust and faith. Staying in the presence and trusting divine guidance. Sometimes things happen and you don't know why God let that happen. And the only thing to do is to just accept what you're feeling. You never stuff your feelings for any of these things. You have your feelings. And then you shift how you're going to hold them. Okay? So the idea of, somebody dies unexpectedly. Oh, somebody young dies. What's happening in Ukraine? Things happen. We just have to surrender them to God, to hold ourselves in prayer, and to surround those people with God's energy and ourselves. So surrender to God. And when there's something that's perplexing you and you don't know what to do, surrender to God. It's called Ishvara Pranidhana. And my thought for you, in what areas of your life might you surrender your will, surrender your desire to control something to God? Doing okay? All right. So now we're going to take a moment to focus on bring ourselves to our ending and focus on the niyama that we're practicing right now. You are actually practicing the niyama of self-study by being in this CUL service. Self-study, I love the word in Sanskrit. It's called svadhyaya, like the Yaya sisters. Sva means study, and adhyaya means, sva means self, and adhyaya means study. So it's study of the self, all right? So ways to study the self are to gather with other people of like mind, to interact in satsangs or meetings in truth, and enhance your higher consciousness. And that's what we're all doing. That's why I wanted to end with this one. So you're all practicing it. Now, I recall the former head of the Yoga Education, Research and Education Foundation. He's passed. His name is Georg Fierstein, and a very erudite yoga scholar. And he said that every night before he goes to bed, he asks himself how well he lived the yamas and niyamas. And he takes whatever he gets, never blaming himself. And the next day, he vows to live them more fully. That's called self-study. Okay? Now, it's about making conscious choices about what we think, what we say, what we do, where we go, with whom we hang out, what programs to watch, what gatherings to join. And I mentioned participating in satsangs and that we're already doing it, attending things that contribute to highest good. So I wrote down, self-study is not about getting better, okay? None of you need to get better, cross my heart. It's not about getting better. I asked God about this group, okay? How you doing? And she said, we're already good enough, and congratulated us on being so God-conscious. We're already good enough, God-conscious. So let me have a show of hands. How many of you have worked on yourself for at least a decade? Raise your hand. Okay. Keep your hand up if it's 2 decades. All right, let's take a look. Anybody 3 decades? Anybody 4 decades? Okay, I'm going to stop there. For me, it's been since my Holy Communion at age 12 that I've been kind of working on myself. So I asked God, I said to her, when does it end? When will I be finished? And God answered, when you no longer want to expand your consciousness. Namaste. Like my ending. So join me in Studio B for further discussion on how you might expand your consciousness and receive the gift of a free Yama Niyama CD. And thank you so much. You're absolutely beautiful. I mean, I had eye contact with so many of you. Thank you, thank you. And thank you out there in cyber world. And just to mention, I have the books and the CDs on sale for $10 in the back of the room, if you'd like to even look at them, and my card.